Hi, Leah.
Hi, Kamna. How are you?
We are gonna have fun today.
I
I
have a
can
feeling
already
we will.
tell.
Yeah, I have a feeling we will. And I actually did my hair for you today, our special guest. I don't normally do my hair at all anymore. I just gave up on that, so you should feel special. We have a chef with us today, Kamna.
I'm so excited.
Chef Nicole. She has been in the industry for 27 years. Am I right, Nicole?
Uh-huh.
27 years, a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York, which I have a lot of questions about that too.
Hmm.
So I want to get into that. I have a lot of basic questions that I hope don't come off as insulting. Like, what's the difference between a chef and a cook and a line cook and
Hmm.
those type questions. But then we want to get into some good nitty gritty stuff. But Nicole is also my cousin. So I have to tell you, my first memory of Nicole cooking for me was, oh my God, her mom used to have this under the counter microwavable popcorn machine. Do you remember back in the 80s and 90s, there was like under the counter was a big thing, like under the counter can openers,
The
under the
air poppers.
coffee makers.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. I need to get a visual. So it was
Yes,
a machine or a device or something that was
machine.
underneath.
And it was an under the counter air popcorn machine.
What does that mean under the counter?
Like, it was, like, mounted under it, so it didn't take up any
Oh,
counter
it was
space.
mounted under the cabinet.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
and she would make
Okay.
us microwavable popcorn with real melted butter all the time.
Oh,
And I
sounds
don't do
good.
you remember that under the counter microwave
That
or
was my favorite popcorn machine.
I look that up very frequently because I would love to own one of those to this day.
Though I don't think they make those anymore.
I don't know, I don't
They
So
either.
do
what?
make the
Okay.
older ones, but
And we had to be, like, 6, 7,
yes,
Oh,
8,
wow.
9.
It was such a good memory for you.
Oh, yes. And it was she melted the butter and poured it on, yes.
Well, this is just a testament to how food is connected to so much more than just our nutrition. It's
Mhm.
connected
absolutely.
to our memories and our love and our affection for somebody, all connected through food, I think.
Absolutely.
Oh, good point. A
100%
very,
agree.
very early memory. So, all
Well, welcome, Nicole. We
right.
are very happy that
So
you are
welcome.
here.
Yeah.
All right, Kamna, you start. What was your first question you had right out of the gate?
Well, I want to know how you came to become a chef. Where did your interest start? And what was sort of your path? I'd love to hear that.
So I was about 6 years old,
Oh,
and
wow.
I wanted to make mashed potatoes, instant mashed potatoes on the stove. And my father told me, "No, you're too young, you can't cook on the stove."
Right.
And from that
I'd
point
probably say
on,
that.
Yeah.
I proved my daddy wrong, and I wanted to be a chef. I knew that I wanted to be a chef on a cruise line as early as 7. I've never done that,
How did
but
you know about cruises at 7? Anyway, that's probably another story, but
somebody actually suggested that to me because you can go travel and see the world for free and work at the
oh,
same time. But I was too close to my mommy to ever do that.
Mhm. Yes, I could see
Yeah.
that too.
So, and then my mom actually took me to the public library and she got me um, video cooking classes,
Oh,
and we followed along and we would make recipes with the videos.
did not know
oh
that.
my gosh, that's amazing.
I
Hmm.
did not know that. Yeah.
And
Do you remember what your first thing that you made well, with her help was?
I do. It was a pudding. It was an almond and cherry pudding, and
Wow.
we made it, and we walked across the street and gave it to our neighbor to try, and that was the first time I learned about food allergies.
Oh
Oh my
god.
god.
Highly allergic to
Oh
almonds. I
my
will never
gosh.
forget that day.
What a
Never
great
forget that day.
story! Because I know this neighbor she's talking about, and
Mhm.
I did not know. Did she know she was allergic to
Oh,
almonds?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
She knew immediately when she put it in her mouth, she spit it right out.
Did she have to go to the hospital?
No, because
Okay.
she spit it out in
She
the
She
knew.
refrigerator.
knew.
Yeah.
But was it good? Was it delicious?
Really good. It was really good.
That's an
Wow.
interesting recipe. Like, that's not easy.
What, pudding?
Well, no,
Almond and
like
cherry pudding.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kinda like one of those '80s things, with, like, like the
Yeah.
marshmallow jello salad kind of a thing,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
ambrosia salads, yeah.
Huh. Okay.
So then you got a bug and you started loving cooking?
Yep, my elementary school librarian, Mrs. Daling, she would push me to the other side of the library for where the older kids would go, and
Okay.
she'd let me take out all the cookbooks, and then from there, it just developed even more because my grandmother was actually the chef at Stouffer's for over 30 years. So, food has always been in
Yeah.
my family, like,
Mhm.
everything we do is very oriented around family dinner. We used to have family dinner every Sunday, spaghetti and meatballs.
Mhm.
And,
Oh, wow.
grandmas and grandpas would come over,
Was the
and
sauce made from scratch?
absolutely. Yep, mom
Oh,
Wow.
put it
yeah.
up on Saturday mornings, and it cooked all day and all night.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can smell it and I can feel the, like, love around the table.
yeah,
So, when
lots
you
of
were
love.
in high school, then you went to vocational school?
Vocational school, mhm,
Okay. Now, let
and
me stop you for a second. Would you recommend vocational school in that aspect to somebody who is interested?
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. Being at the vocational school, my teacher was an amazing teacher.
Mhm.
She pushed us to look further than look beyond what's in front of us.
Okay.
And she's actually the one that pushed me to go to the CIA.
Okay.
Um, and we got involved into cooking competitions, and you learn the basic things that you need to know when you're in a restaurant.
Okay.
Most vocational schools have a um, AM and PM program where the AM staff will prep for the restaurant and the PM staff will run the restaurant.
Okay.
And
Okay.
yeah, so I learned a lot from just that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that everyone, if there's some aspiring chefs out there,
Mhm.
you don't need a college education to be a professional chef. I could have done it on my own with just that vocational school
Okay.
knowledge
Mhm.
and just going into the industry and learning from the bottom up. That's what my husband did. He hasn't had not 1 ounce of training. He's 100% on the job training, which is sometimes better, in my opinion, than going to sit at a desk and
Yeah.
pound numbers into your head or
Yeah.
terms or,
But
you
what I
know,
heard you say is work your way up.
work your way up. Absolutely. You
Yeah.
have to work your way up from the bottom
Yeah.
to respect all the people below you. Far
Mm.
too often people forget to respect those little guys. In
Mhm.
my opinion, the dishwasher is the most important person in that building.
I agree
Yeah.
100%.
Mhm.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
What was the hardest thing you made when you were in culinary school?
The hardest thing I made, an ice sculpture.
What?
We
Oh,
had
they had
to
you.
we had to make it was, one of our last classes before externship, and we had to make a drawing of what we wanted to sculpt, and I failed that because I got a little too carried away the night before, and, my partner and I had to come up with something on the fly to sculpt out of this block of ice,
My god.
and we started really late, and it came out like, it was not very nice ice sculpture, and we kinda failed that part of our course, but it's hard. Like, you
That's
think
a
being a
really
chef
interesting.
is just the cooking part, but it's not.
Well,
It's much
before
more
we
than
move
that.
on to that, I wanna know, why is an ice sculpture part of cooking classes?
So, it was in our garde manger class, so that was
Wait, say that
more
again?
of garde manger,
What does that mean?
like cold things, appetizers, and
Okay.
so the main part of it was, um, setting up a buffet, and we would do these
Oh,
big grand buffets in our dining hall, and we had to make the ice sculptures for the buffet, and yeah, no.
so when you're in culinary school, there are classes on cold buffets, warm buffets.
No, it's techniques of cooking. So
Okay.
in the garde manger class, it was, like pâté en croûtes and mousses and gravlax and yeah, that
You're so fancy.
And did you ever have a
I try.
like, did you ever have a cheese class and a wine class?
So, you learn about cheeses, throughout the whole course. There's not
Okay,
one thing dedicated to cheese, but
okay.
there is a very extensive wine class that you have to take, and most people will fail or meet like C's, maybe
Really?
low
It's
B's.
that
Not.
hard?
It's very, very, very hard.
Okay, if you have a bad sense of smell, can you be good at wine tasting?
I would say yes because you're
Really?
still tasting it.
Okay,
But not as much as someone who had a very refined palate
okay,
or sense of smell.
okay. Those are just
Since we're talking about smell, I want to ask you a question that I've always thought, but I've never really expressed out loud except to my children. I always feel I can smell something cooking and say what's needed in it without tasting it. Can you do that?
I could,
Yeah.
but I
Okay.
prefer tasting it.
Well, yes,
you could
tasting is
smell
there.
something and go, "Oh, this needs salt?"
Uh-huh.
What?
Yeah.
That makes me feel so normal.
That is
Yeah.
not normal. I think that's a gift because I don't have that gift. I don't think that's normal. I can't smell something and be like, "Oh, I think that needs butter or anything."
No, I can't not along those lines, but, like, if you're smelling tomato sauce and you're like, "Oh, I think it needs more basil," because
What?
you're not smelling it, so you're not gonna taste it either.
Okay. Oh, that's a good point. If you don't smell it, you're not gonna taste it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. So
Wow,
you're right.
I feel very normal, which is not typical. So so once you graduated from culinary school,
Mhm.
and I'm sure we could ask you questions
Oh,
about
I
that
could.
for probably an hour.
Yeah.
But what did you do next?
I went to a restaurant in the Cleveland area that was very, very, very well known, and I worked there for 6 years, and then I got into the country club circuit, and I
Oh,
worked at several country clubs,
Okay.
and then found my way to a little restaurant in Concord, and it was probably the changing point in my career. That's
So
where I
back
met my husband, he was my sous chef, and
okay.
okay, back up.
and
So you're the restaurant you worked at first in the Cleveland
mhm.
area, do you call that a fancy restaurant?
That was a yeah, that
Now, were
was
you a sh w
fine dining.
were you a chef at that point?
No, I worked my way up. Um, I worked my way up from salads to lead line cook and then got transferred to another restaurant and where I was the executive chef.
Okay. So chefs don't make salads.
Chefs don't make salads
So if
unless
I
they
get
have
a
to.
beautiful salad at a restaurant, it's not a chef making it.
No.
Did you know that, Kamna?
I mean, I would guess that they would pass it off to somebody else.
I don't even know what I okay. So is it an insult if somebody says, "What is a chef and what's the difference?" Is that like
No,
it's insulting
absolutely
you?
not.
Okay.
Um, a chef is, in my opinion, the anyone can cook. I'm gonna take that from Ratatouille.
Okay.
Anybody can cook, but it's the executive chef or head chef or even kitchen manager that is the conductor of the symphony. They need to be
Mm,
the ones that are guiding and teaching and making sure everything is going off the way they intend it to
okay.
and manage that at every minute of the day. That's a chef.
Okay.
That's a chef. And
So
go ahead.
as a chef, you're overseeing like all the dishes that are being prepared and all the sauces and all the sides, and you're overseeing all of that.
Yes,
Mhm.
And you're directing the sous chefs to do whatever they need to do.
correct.
And a
Okay.
cook is probably someone at home doing all of that or whoever they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, you can say that. But
Or
yeah,
a mom. Let's
the
call it a
line
mom.
cook
Yeah.
Sorry.
yeah, mom. The, line cooks and, the dishwashers, You know, they're still just as important as everybody
Of
else,
course.
Yeah.
but they're just not management.
Yeah. So line
Okay.
cook and sous chef are different?
Yes.
Okay.
The sous chef is the right arm of the chef. He can fall on him at any point and everything will still go off perfectly in a restaurant.
Okay.
So if I wasn't in the restaurant, the sous chef would assume my role,
Okay.
the chain of command and
Okay.
So
so
the
on.
sous why do I have trouble with that?
The
Sous
sous
chef
chef,
is sort of like an understudy to the chef,
pretty
but
much.
Yeah.
still working.
Mhm.
Okay. Wow.
And does a sous chef, why do I have to keep saying that word? A sous chef have to learn all of your ways if you're a head chef?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Absolutely.
And you and
There's
your husband were chef and sous chef?
yeah.
Oh my god, I could not do that with my husband. We would
You
have
know
never
what?
fallen in love. We would have killed each other.
So it was everyone was like, "Oh my god, how can you live and work
Yeah.
with" at the time he was my boyfriend, but um you know, we got into such a routine with it. Once we got out of that routine and he went to work at another restaurant, it was a very hard adjustment.
Really?
Mm.
Super I knew what he was doing 24/7.
Yeah.
He was either in my kitchen or in my bed. So, I knew where he was. But with him with me not seeing him all day
Yeah.
every day and knowing exactly where he was at,
It
then
was
it was kinda rough there for a
yeah.
minute.
I could see that too, yeah.
Especially if
And
you get along well, I can see that it would be really easy to work together because there's a
yeah,
lot of unspoken language.
a lot of unspoken language, and
Mhm.
that's actually what made me fall in love with him because we would be working on the line together, and I wouldn't have to say anything to him. He
Yeah.
would just
Right.
anticipate every one of my needs and vice versa.
So
I
And I
knew
would
you
what he
knew he
needed.
was gonna be a good husband.
Yeah.
that's a good sous chef then, I'm
Yes.
assuming, if they know what
Absolutely.
you're gonna do before you do it.
Exactly.
Okay.
I could say, "Hey, Robert, this is what I'm thinking."
Yeah.
"Okay, I'll make it work." And he can cook it just the way I would.
Wow.
Okay. Wow.
So who cooks at home?
He does. Ironically, I'm a microwave mom.
I love
Let's
that
What
be
you're
real for a
honest.
second. My kids don't want breaded chicken cutlets.
Yeah.
They want dino nuggets.
Mhm.
mm.
They don't want french fries that I make. They want McDonald's french fries.
Yeah. They're
So dinner is very macaroni and cheese and chicken nuggets in the microwave.
mhm.
Do you get tired of cooking and then come home and either, like, say, "I don't wanna cook," or is it just because they don't wanna eat that?
I think it's a little of both. If
Okay.
I cook, I'm gonna hear a fight.
Yeah, they're
You
I
know,
don't
I
want
gotta find.
that.
Ew, that's gross. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Here's your chicken nuggets.
Yeah.
When you're hungry enough to eat something different, you're gonna eat it. You're
Yeah.
gonna
True.
try something new. So I'd rather not force an issue that I know what the outcome's gonna be and just keep the stress level low.
Right.
Totally.
Oh my god, there was a period of time when my son only ate hot dogs, and then he would switch, and then it would only be corn dogs, and then he would switch, and it would be burgers, and I was like, "I don't even I'm not it's not worth me making dinner and making a mess and then nobody eating it." So I get that where you're
Yeah,
at. Like, that's the stage I think you go through.
yeah.
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 'Cause it can't be a variety. It's only gotta be chicken,
Yeah.
cheese, chips, and nonies. Like, that's it. And
Yeah.
then maybe we'll have a grilled cheese every now and then, but like you said, it's a stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what? It reminds me when my youngest son is very fancy. And when
Oh,
he was 5 years old, he wanted me to make a cake. I might have told this story before, I don't know. And I made a layered cake with chocolate cake and caramel mousse and a chocolate mousse, and it was like really fancy.
Mhm.
And we took it to the bowling alley, and this guy must have walked by 5 times looking at this cake. And then finally I said, "Would you like a piece?" Because even at 5, my kid's, like, wanting something not from Giant Eagle or grocery store or whatever. He just wanted, like, something really, really fancy. I think it's harder that way almost.
Oh,
Yeah, it could be.
could
Yeah, I
be.
can see that.
So
Yeah, anyway,
did you make the cake from scratch?
a cake box.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. That
I
makes
would
I
make
s
it from
I
scratch
swear by
now.
Duncan Hines.
okay, good to know.
Swear by Duncan Hines. You can't mess up a Duncan Hines cake.
No,
Okay.
you can't mess up a cake box, but I would probably make it from scratch now,
Now you would,
knowing
yeah.
what
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
So, we would love to transition to talking about restaurant things. Um, yeah, I know you have a lot of questions about this. You wanna start?
My first, no, this is my very first question off the top of my, do you use butter? And I mean like butter, butter, or is it like butter that has lots of other crap in it?
Okay, so that all boils down to the restaurant.
Okay.
Um, a lot of restaurants use butter it, and it is a liquid hydrogenated oil that is flavored with butter.
So it's not real butter.
It's not real butter. But if you get into the higher end restaurants,
Yeah.
then they're putting butter in everything.
But
They
real
don't
butter.
care. Real butter. They don't care about your waistline.
Right.
And that's what one of your questions I saw was, why does it taste so much better
Yeah.
Mhm,
when you go out to eat than you do at home?
Yeah.
Because we're putting the extra cream in your mashed potatoes. We're putting the
mhm.
extra butter in your over your fish when you get it sautéed.
Yeah.
Um, and in sometimes the salt, it makes a huge difference. There's
Is
no
it the
such thing
type
as
of
low
salt or
sodium. 9 out of 10 restaurants will use kosher salt. They
Okay.
will not use iodized salt, but, with that being said, that's why everything tastes so good, because we load it with salt and we load it with butter or fat, any kind of fat.
well, why doesn't it taste salty?
It's just that
Question.
right balance that you learn as you the more you cook.
Hmm.
Like, I can put salt in something, and I already know how much a tablespoon is in my hand, because 'cause I've been doing it for 27 years,
Oh,
So you don't have to
but
measure.
no measuring.
no.
I don't measure.
Yeah. I'm
So if someone asks you for a recipe, do you can you give them measurements or you're like, "Well, a little bit of this and a little bit of that?"
Oh, no, I can give you measurements.
But
Oh, oh,
it's all like, because 'cause you've done it so much.
It's like tying your shoes.
Yeah.
You don't
Okay, so
forget.
I don't
wow.
think I've ever been to a fancy restaurant. I don't think I've ever been to a fancy restaurant. So I probably never had real butter is what I'm thinking.
No, because, like, there's a lot of, like, greasy spoons that use real butter. It really depends on the owner, the chef,
Okay.
and sometimes and sad to say, some restaurants can't afford to use real butter.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
And again, I wanna get into really quick
Yeah.
is you have more rights as a consumer than you think.
What do you mean?
You can ask, "Do you use real butter? Do
Right.
you use hydrogenated oil? Do you use kosher salt, iodized salt?" But one of the most important things I learned in culinary school, and I was blown away because it was like one of my very first classes I took. Was restaurant law.
Oh,
Good.
You as a consumer
Yeah.
have the right to ask to see the kitchen. You have the right to go back there and see what is being done and how it's being operated.
Um,
Yes, there's some times where you can't go back there because the shit's hitting the fan.
yeah.
They're super busy, but you have the right to see where your food is coming from. Most chefs won't let you do that, but I pulled that string when I was in Disney, and I got to go see the kitchen of Nemo's underwater restaurant.
Oh,
I don't even remember what it was called, but it was in Epcot, and I was actually able to go back there and see how it worked, and it was the most cleanest, the most quietest restaurant kitchen that I've ever been in.
wow.
It was beautiful.
Huh.
well,
It
let
was
me ask you
absolutely
something
beautiful.
flip side. So last week, I think I went to a restaurant and I went to the restroom and I had to walk by kind of by the kitchen and it
Mhm.
had that smell of, I want
Ooh.
to say like wet towel kind of smell.
Oh,
Yeah.
I hate that
Yeah,
wet towel smell.
yeah. That's a
Which
dirty kitchen.
is it?
Oh,
That's a dirty kitchen.
So you wouldn't eat in a place like that.
Sometimes the best foods come out of those kitchens.
Oh, okay.
Um,
good point.
before I get into that, you can go online, Ohio Public Health, and
Okay.
you can look up any restaurant's health inspection.
Okay.
If you're concerned
Oh, is
about
that
that
public
restaurant,
record?
that
That's a
is public record.
did not know
You
that.
can research any restaurant's um, food service inspection. They have twice 2 a year,
Yeah.
so you can access all of that stuff
I did
online.
not know that was public record.
I
Mhm.
didn't either.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
It's good to
Um,
know.
so
So what
back to
they just probably don't wash their towels.
no, that's a old grease, um, wet
Oh.
mop, like a mop bucket
Mhm.
smell is what you're
Mhm.
smelling?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't know
It's
how to
just
describe it. It was like that smell that
I smell it. I can smell it.
But
I
I
know
guarantee that
exactly what
you're
you're
probably
talking
right.
about.
That might not even have anything to do with the food, though. That just might be they didn't
No.
even change their darn mop head.
That or it could be if the restaurant is, like, 80 years old and it's always
Oh,
been a restaurant, that's just, like, natural odor from c all that cooking that
Mhm.
gets
yeah.
soaked into the wood, or I worked in a restaurant like that, and there was no getting rid of that smell because
Okay.
it was downtown,
Yeah.
and you just it can't go anywhere. The
It didn't
kitchen was immaculate, but that
yeah,
smell is still
in your
So
nose.
I've
yeah.
seen by the way, like walking or whatever, you get a peek into the kitchen and sometimes it's you're like, "Oh boy, my food's coming out of this place. The floor is kind of dirty and there's like things are not clean." What is your opinion about eating food from a kitchen like that?
Well, it tells its own story. If you what you see isn't exactly what seeing is believing, believing is seeing kind of thing.
Okay.
Um, just because you see it that it's a mess doesn't mean your food's not being prepared in a clean area.
Okay.
Okay. That's good
If
to
they
know.
had raw chicken on the where he's making salads, then I'd be really concerned. But
Mhm.
Okay.
if there's stuff on the floor or it's chaotic and it doesn't appear to be clean,
Mhm.
it just could be that they're in a really heavy dinner rush. We call it being in the weeds where you can't like keep up fast enough to get the food out.
Okay.
Um,
I'm so
it doesn't
relieved to hear
necessarily
that.
mean I'm sorry?
I'm so relieved to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like "Oh god, like,
Right.
Mhm.
I can't believe I'm eating that." But the surfaces where your food is prepared
Is
may
more
be
important.
more immaculate than McDonald's or,
Mhm.
you
Right.
know
That's what we need to be looking at, the surfaces where they're
right. And
preparing.
you're not gonna be able to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you pull that restaurant, consumer card,
Yeah.
you're allowed to see it.
Hmm.
What do you think about a home chef taking shortcuts in their cooking? Like
As far
something
as
that's
what?
Yeah, what do you
prepared, like a sauce or a
oh, like buying, like,
Like,
fettuccine
in
alfredo sauce?
like, instead of making my own marinara, I'm using a can kinda thing?
correct, correct.
So, that again is gonna depend on what restaurant you're going into. Um, the restaurant I used to work at, we used canned marinara, but we made it our own
You
because the
doctored
base
it
was a
up.
good base. We doctored
Mhm.
it up and called it our own. But there's a lot of places like Olive Garden that just open the can.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
Like, they have their own sauce that they make and can, and they
just open it.
open it in
Oh, okay. But they made it somewhere in some
somewhere, but
But it's
the
factory.
not
but
Yeah.
in a
fresh.
restaurant setting, they're still opening the can,
But it's not
Okay.
fresh.
but
It's
it's not fresh, no.
right.
That's why it always tastes the same.
Exactly.
Probably.
They have all of those critical things as a what's the word I'm looking for?
Like their
It's a
standby
standard. This is
standard.
what it is. There's no
Yeah.
room for creativity. There's no room for Joe over there on salads to mess up the salad dressing because it's all coming out of a bottle.
Gotcha.
The more corporate you get, the more,
Yeah,
like the Olive Gardens, the Applebee's, the corporate
yeah.
restaurants, Buffalo Wild Wings, their sauces are all in a jug. They're not
Right.
making them. Or if you were to go to, um, like I have a restaurant down the street where they make all of their own wing sauces.
Oh,
So they're doing all their stuff by hand or on the stove,
yeah.
whereas opposed to Buffalo Wild Wings is opening a jug.
Okay.
And it doesn't
So
necessarily mean that they're opening their sauce. They could be opening a cattleman's bottle of barbecue for their wings.
okay.
Hmm.
So if it says fresh or homemade, can we believe that it's fresh or what is
That's a
Oh,
that?
you
very
mean
good
on the
question.
menu, you mean, Kamna? You mean
Yeah.
you're looking at a menu and it says homemade whatever,
Stuffed shells.
stuffed shells, okay,
Okay, so that goes back to my restaurant law class.
okay,
Okay.
You are not allowed to put things on a menu that aren't true. It's called truth in menus. So
okay.
if you
Oh,
say that it's homemade, you can't say it's homemade. It's supposed to be house made because
Oh,
food is not allowed to come out of a home. So
okay.
it gets a little confusing. So
Right,
home
yeah,
meaning my home.
mhm,
okay,
That's homemade.
mhm.
okay,
House made is made in the
In-house.
restaurant,
yeah.
in-house. So, they can't ne you necessarily can't put it on the menu if you're not making it from scratch.
But they can use
And
the word homemade because it's not
they can't use homemade because you're not allowed to take foods made in a home and
okay.
use it in a restaurant
I'm so confused.
unless they, oh, wow, we're getting into some major laws here. So then there's a cottage law. So if your mom made me a cake,
Okay.
I can use your cake in my restaurant as long as it's not refrigerated. You
Oh,
can
Okay.
sell products out of your house that don't require refrigeration. Your muffins, your breads, your cakes, your
oh,
cookies.
you can sell those.
You can sell those.
Hmm,
The law protects you on that. But
okay.
if you get anything over, if you have to have your food controlled temperature wise, then it's illegal. You can't do that. You
So
can
you could
use.
go so if I go to a restaurant and they have, like, cheesecakes and cakes and stuff, those
Mhm.
are probably made from somebody local in the area.
Could be, or they could be coming off out of a frozen truck that's dropping them off in the morning.
Gotcha, okay.
What about something that says fresh or grandma's, or is that just
Yeah,
marketing or is that
They could be marketing, but like, grandma's potato salad. I
Mhm.
could be using my grandma's recipe.
so
Okay.
there's no standard, like, they can't there's no r law, they can use those
Right.
words.
They can use those words. Here's a good one. Uh, do either one of you order short ribs off of a menu?
Yep, she's vegan,
Oh,
but,
Okay.
so
um
that's a huge restaurant law kind of a
what do you
violation
mean?
because they're calling it a short rib.
Okay.
And nowadays, they're using a cut of meat called the chuck flap that cooks and tastes and looks just like a short rib, but
Not,
it is like a third of the price of short ribs.
and they can scam you?
It's not really a scam. You're
Okay,
just
sorry.
buying a cut of meat
Yeah.
that you think is a short rib, but it's not.
Oh.
Hmm.
So that's where your truth in menus comes into play. You
Wow.
can't really sell a short rib if it's not a short rib
But they do you think people do it?
all the time. I
Okay.
used to do it.
Oh, okay.
I used to do it because
Yeah.
it's it's kind of the same thing, but it's not.
But
Mhm.
at the same time, if you woulda said whatever you said before instead of short rib, I probably wouldn't have gotten it because 'cause I'd be like, "What the hell is
Right,
that?"
chuck flap. What the hell's
Right,
chuck flap?
right, and it
It's
doesn't
a
sound as
braised piece of
good.
beef.
Right. Okay. So really you can't
Restaurant corners and we do take the shortcuts.
Yeah.
There's
Mhm.
shortcuts,
Yeah.
but, ask questions.
So
Okay.
If
if
you wanna
you're
know
if
if there's real butter in your mashed potatoes, how are your mashed potatoes prepared?
Okay.
mm,
What are your ingredients in your mashed potatoes?
Okay.
Because chances are I'm gonna tell you butter, butter, and more butter,
Right.
but they may tell you it comes out of a bag.
Mhm.
okay.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead, comment on what was your other.
I forgot what I was just gonna ask, because every time I listen, I'm like,
I know.
involved in
I feel
the
like I'm
conversation.
talking in circles.
No, you're not. You're good.
No, no,
You're
this
not.
is really no. So for the next like few minutes, I would love to ask you a few questions and then continue the conversation over on our subscription episode, with just our questions coming at you, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
So the one thing I read or heard recently, it's on one of those reels, I'm sure. I say read, but I didn't really read it, is that eating fries at a restaurant is really dangerous for your health. Can you explain that? Is that true or not?
Um, it depends on why people are saying it's unhealthy. If you're vegan,
Mhm.
a lot
Mostly,
of
yes.
a lot of people will fry their chicken in the same
Okay.
fryer that they're frying their french fries in.
Hmm.
Okay.
Um, if you're gluten free, my sister's very gluten free right now, and you can't cross contaminate gluten whatsoever. A lot of
Okay.
people think if you throw it in the deep fryer, it's going to get rid of the gluten. It
It doesn't?
doesn't. The flour is still in that oil. You can't use that oil.
Okay.
Okay.
So, um,
That's
it
true.
depends on what they're frying it in.
Okay.
Like some places use peanut oil. If you're allergic to peanuts,
Right.
you need to know what's in that oil.
Right.
So
Right.
from like an allergy and
Like
your preference of if you're a vegan, a vegetarian,
dietary
you know,
needs.
dietary things, thank you.
Yeah.
Um, then yes, you should be asking questions of what goes in that deep fryer.
Okay. What about the like reusing the same oil over and over and over? Isn't that bad?
So it just depends on how busy your restaurant is.
Okay.
If your menu is 90% fried,
Yeah.
you're frying that oil that day. And if it's not so busy, you're gonna strain it. You're gonna take all the breadcrumbs and stuff out of it, and
And
you
you
can reuse it. But the longer you use it, it starts to smoke, and
okay.
then it burns. So you have to get rid of that oil to be able to serve the product in the standards that you wanted.
How
So
So you
how
often?
have
often
Yeah.
how often?
Yeah.
do
I
they
mean, I know you
change
said
it?
it depends, but
It should not be used for more than 5 days, 5, 6 days.
Oh, wow. So
But yeah,
they
it
have that oil hot all day, and then they can reuse it the next day and the next day, and for
mhm.
5 days.
Yeah, it depends on how busy you are, and again, the oil, because oils have different smoking points, and some oils last longer in the fryer than others.
okay.
So, most
Would
people fry
you
with a soybean oil or a canola oil.
would you know if that's bad for your health? As a chef, do you know
Like
Using the
to re
actual deep fryer?
to reuse the oil so much?
No, it's not bad. It's okay because you're
Okay.
heating it up to 350, 400 degrees as you're
Mhm.
using it.
Okay.
So it's not like you can get sick from using yesterday's oil.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. I
But
guess
it's
that was
old oil.
When it's old oil, you can't use it. You won't be able to fry anything in it.
is there a
So
difference in Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Is there a difference between what a fancy restaurant does as a versus like a mom and pop shop in terms of do they change the oil out more often or do they use a different type of oil or does it make a difference?
So bottom line for restaurants is how much can we get out
Profit.
of this before we have to spend more money to fill the fryer?
Yeah, I get that.
And it comes down to, you know, can I afford to do it? And
Mhm.
corporate places can. The mom and pops can't.
Mm.
Um, but there are some mom and pops like I don't know if you guys remember Jonathan Sawyer, he had a restaurant down in Cleveland. He
Mm-mm.
would put duck fat in his fryer, and that
Oh,
is, like, super expensive compared to your canola oil. But
Really?
frying in duck fat is fantastic. If
Oh.
you should try it, it's amazing. Um,
Oh, so you really should be asking that if you're getting
you need to know what your stuff's being fried in,
wow. Hmm.
I
'cause
never would have thought to ask that question.
yeah.
Yeah, because if you get fries and you're thinking, okay, well, that's all right. It's just fries. It could be cooked in something. Let me tell you something. I can tell if somebody, if during Lent, if I order something, I don't like any seafood or fish. But if I get something and if fish was just fried in it, I can taste it. I swear.
Mhm. You can, I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Hmm.
you just need to ask those questions. Do any animal-based products go into that fryer with my french fries if you're a vegan?
Okay. Okay.
Well, we've asked that a couple of times, and I always think, "Oh, they must be not doing that to cross-contaminate," but, I mean, I'm sure they're trying to maximize their at the end of
Yeah.
the day, their turnover and their profit.
Mhm.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Hmm. Okay, here's another one that I heard. Lemons are really dirty in restaurants.
Hmm. Yes.
That's true.
Yes?
Yes. They're dirty. Because I'm gonna give you a little scenario. This past
Okay.
weekend, we were, somewhere, and a woman came up to me, and she's like, "Hey, chef, I just saw this girl cutting the lemons for the drinks on the table." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "They're cutting the lemons on, one of those plastic tables,
Oh
like, for
Okay.
my.
parties that you set up and break down?"
Yeah.
And she was cutting them on the table. There was no cutting board.
Oh.
Oh.
She didn't have gloves on, so whatever was on that table is now going into your drink. So it really depends on your establishment. My old restaurant, we washed everything.
Oh,
We washed
you would wash
everything,
the lemons?
and you wash everything and put it in the cooler, so it's ready to use right out of that cooler.
So
Mm,
how do you
Not a
know
lot
if
of
it's
places do that,
they don't.
a lemon is clean or not then?
you
You
don't.
don't. Do you get a lemon or and you just say it's okay, or what do you do?
Do I get a lemon?
Yeah,
I do.
yeah,
I
even
do. Unfortunately, if I
yeah,
get a lemon, I'm squeezing it on my drink or
okay,
on my fish, or I'm putting it in my drink.
okay.
And 9 out of 10 times that drink has alcohol in it, and I pray to God it kills everything in it.
Okay, wait, I got another question. Somebody recently told me that ice is dirty in a restaurant.
Oh, it could very well be.
Oh,
Yes.
See?
really?
This person
So a
told
lot
me
of people
yeah.
don't think that mold can grow on an ice machine because it's so cold.
She said, "Don't ever" she goes, "There are certain places I would never get anything unless it's in a bottle that's sealed." I go, "What about water?" She goes, "Oh, I would never drink water from that place." She said the ice machine was right the bar was here and then the ice was here, and she goes, "You know how many people would drop something in there or as the
Mhm.
bartender's wiping the top, it would go in," and I'm like, "Oh." They said, "The ice is just gross. Do you have to always make sure the ice machine isn't, like, right by the bar?" And I'm like,
Oh my
So
gosh.
they do have the bins at the bar so
"Yeah."
that they can make the drinks. Um, Again, that's gonna go on to, like, if you're going to a hole in the wall bar,
Yeah, it's gross,
it's
probably.
gross, probably gross.
And I'm
But
not
if
gonna lie
you're
to you
going to a higher end restaurant, like, we're talking like you're paying 15, $16 for a martini, maybe
it's probably
20.
better.
The more you pay, the more quality control there is.
Yeah, they don't have I was thinking about it, I was, like, judging I was very rudely judging establishments, and then I went, "They don't have time to change that ice out." If I drop my drink in there and my napkin in that I in it and it dripped, they don't have time at a 6 o'clock rush to get rid of all that ice and get all new ice in. They just don't.
So if that
Yeah,
restaurant was under my leadership,
yeah.
there would have been a sheet tray on top of that ice and a bus tub of ice sitting on top of it. You
Oh,
shouldn't use it.
yeah, you
You
shouldn't,
shouldn't.
but I'm
No.
sure I
I'm sure there's people consuming that ice right now. But, it depends on your establishment, and there's there's no rhyme or reason to who does and who doesn't.
Right?
Wow.
Okay, do you think it's true that you gain more weight after you eat out, even though it's not real weight? Like, I feel like if I eat out tonight at a restaurant, my scale goes up tomorrow. Is it from the salt and the butter and, like, pop
So
that I'm
I
drinking?
find you're going out to eat. How often do you go out to eat?
I don't go often.
Okay. So when you do go out and you're
Yeah,
sitting out and you're, let's just say it's you and your hubby,
yeah,
and he's not pissing you off and you're actually
right.
enjoying yourself,
Yeah,
you're gonna eat and you're gonna indulge and
so you're doing more.
you're in that moment and you don't realize you're doing it, but you're doing it.
Yeah,
Ah, good
that could be
point.
a lot of it too.
Because what happens, when you're dating,
Right.
you're
Yeah,
watching everything you put in your mouth because you wanna keep them, and then once you get them, what happens? You look like me.
They're like, You've seen all the bad. You can just
Yeah,
keep going."
okay.
Yep.
Well, I would love to continue this conversation. If somebody wants to listen, they can go into our subscription episode. But thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And we've really, really learned a lot.
I have more
Good, I'm glad.
questions too.